When my husband forgot the woman who built our home, he did not forget my name. He forgot my effort. He forgot my waiting. He forgot the years I quietly poured into making a life for us. And the hardest part is this: he never meant to hurt me. I did not cry the day I realized it. I was standing in the kitchen, holding a plate in my hands, when the thought came to me without warning. If I stopped doing everything tomorrow, would he notice? That question stayed with me. It followed me from room to room. It sat beside me at night. It whispered to me in the quiet moments. And slowly, it broke my heart. Our home was not big, but it was full of small habits, full of routines that held us together, full of pieces of me in every corner. The curtains I chose, the meals I learned to cook just the way he liked, the furniture we bought when money was tight but hope was strong. This house did not build itself. I built it with love, with patience, with years I will never get back. When we were young, he used to look at me like I was the answer to everything. When he came home tired, he smiled the moment he saw me. When he spoke about his dreams, he spoke to me. I was part of every plan. Back then, we believed love was enough. I believed that if I gave enough, love would stay full. So I gave. I gave up my own plans when his dreams needed space. I gave up rest when the house needed care. I gave up my voice when peace felt more important than being heard. I did it willingly. I did it lovingly. I did it believing this was what partnership looked like. Years passed quietly. Not with fights. Not with cruelty. Just with life. Work grew heavier for him. Responsibilities grew heavier for me. And slowly, the balance changed. Not suddenly. So slowly that I did not notice until I was already tired. I became the one who remembered everything. Birthdays, appointments, bills. What needed fixing, what needed buying. I became the one who held the house together when life pulled at its edges. And he became used to it. Used to coming home to things being done. Used to comfort waiting for him. Used to me being there without question. He still spoke to me. Still asked simple things. But he no longer asked about me. How was your day? Became, did you do this? What do you think? Became, it doesn't matter. He did not say those words unkindly. That is important to understand. He said them as if they were obvious. Somewhere along the way, I became part of the background. Like the walls. Like the furniture. Always there. Never noticed. I remember one evening clearly. He was talking about his work, his stress, his future plans. I listened like I always did. When he finished, I said softly, "I've been feeling tired lately." He nodded. Then, he continued talking about himself. That was it. No questions. No pause. Just moving on. That night, I lay awake thinking about all the times I had listened. All the nights I stayed up while he slept. All the moments I told myself, this is what love means. And I wondered, who is taking care of me? I did not feel angry. I felt small. Small in a house I helped build. Small in a marriage I gave my best years to. Small in a life where my presence had become expected, not appreciated. People on the outside would never guess. They would say, "You have a good husband." And they were not wrong. He was not cruel. He was not careless on purpose. He simply forgot to look back. Forgot to see who was holding everything together. Some days, I stood in the doorway and watched him move through the house. Confident, focused, comfortable. And I thought to myself, he lives in a world that works because I make it work. But he did not see that. And I did not know how to say it without sounding like I was asking for praise. The truth is, I did not want praise. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted him to see the woman behind the routines. The woman behind the meals. The woman behind the clean rooms and quiet support. This home has my fingerprints on everything. But my name, my feelings, my tired heart, those were slowly being erased. And I was the only one who noticed. That is where the story begins. Not with shouting, not with betrayal, but with a woman standing quietly in her own home, wondering when she became invisible. The days after that realization felt longer than usual. Nothing had changed on the outside. The house still stood. The routine still worked. But inside me, something had begun to ache. I started noticing how often my name was spoken only when something was needed. Where's my shirt? Did you pay the bill? What's for dinner? Simple questions. Familiar questions. But none of them asked how I was. When I tried to share a thought, he would listen with half his attention. His eyes on the television, his phone in his hand. I would stop mid-sentence sometimes just to see if he noticed. He never did. So, I learned to finish my thoughts. Inside my own head, there were moments when I felt foolish for feeling this way. I told myself, he works hard. He provides. This is just how marriage becomes. But excuses can only protect the heart for so long. Eventually, they turn into walls. I remember one afternoon when I felt especially tired. Not tired from work, tired from being strong all the time. I said quietly, I feel like I'm doing everything alone. He sighed, not in anger, but in confusion. We're a team, he said. And that hurt more than silence. Because teams notice when one person is carrying all the weight. The house grew quieter. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet where words are avoided. Where feelings stay locked inside because you are not sure they will be understood. I became careful. Careful not to sound ungrateful. Careful not to ask for too much. Careful not to disturb his comfort. I noticed how quickly he adjusted to my absence when I stepped back. If I didn't cook, he ordered food. If I didn't remind him of something, he missed it. But he never asked why. That was the hardest part. Sometimes, I sat alone at the dining table long after the meal was done. The chair across from me empty. The room still. And I wondered how two people could live together and feel so far apart. He still smiled at me. Still spoke kindly, still expected me to be there. But he no longer leaned toward me, no longer checked in, no longer noticed when I was quiet. I tried to remember the last time he thanked me, not for a task, but for being me. The memory felt distant, like something from another life. I began to feel like a caretaker instead of a partner, like someone maintaining a life rather than living one. I missed feeling chosen. Missed feeling important without having to earn it. One evening, he mentioned inviting friends over. He spoke as if everything would arrange itself. I nodded. Then I caught myself. I realized he assumed the house would be ready. Because I would make it ready. And that assumption stung. That night, I lay in bed listening to his steady breathing. I thought about all the small ways I had disappeared. Not because he pushed me, but because I stepped back quietly. I wondered if love can fade even when no one means it to. I began asking myself questions I had avoided for years. When did I stop mattering? When did my needs become optional? When did I stop being seen? The answers were unclear, but the feeling was not. I was slowly losing myself, and he didn't notice. That is how conflict grows sometimes. Not with raised voices, but with unanswered feelings, with small moments that pile up until the heart feels heavy. And I was carrying more than I could hold. The breaking point did not arrive with noise. It came quietly, like most things in my life. It came on a morning that looked just like every other morning. I woke up before him, as usual. The house was still asleep. The kind of stillness that feels heavy instead of calm. I stood in the kitchen, holding a cup of tea, and stared at the window. Outside, the day was beginning. Inside, I felt stuck. I suddenly realized something that made my hands tremble. I could go through the entire day, and no one would ask how I felt. Not because they were cruel, but because they were used to me being fine. That realization sat in my chest like a stone. Later that day, I tried one last time to speak. Not with blame. Not with anger. Just honesty. I said, I feel lonely, even when you're here. He looked surprised. Lonely, he asked. But we're together all the time. That was when I knew to him being together meant sharing space. To me, it meant sharing life. We were standing in the same room, but living in different worlds. That evening, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. I looked at my face, the tired eyes, the quiet sadness I had been carrying for years. I whispered, When did you stop taking care of yourself? And for the first time, I didn't blame him. I blamed the silence I had accepted. I remembered the woman I used to be. The woman who laughed easily. The woman who had opinions. The woman who believed her feelings mattered. Somewhere along the way, she became smaller, quieter, easier to overlook. A few days later, something small happened. Something that changed everything. He had an important day. I helped him prepare, like always. Before he left, I asked softly, "Do I look all right?" He glanced at me and said, "You're fine." Fine. That word stayed with me long after the door closed. I sat on the edge of the bed and felt something inside me crack. Not anger, not rage, just sadness. Deep, quiet sadness. I wasn't asking to be admired. I wasn't asking to be praised. I was asking to be seen. And even that felt invisible. That night, he talked about his day. The people who listened to him. The praise he received. I listened quietly. Then, he went to sleep. Without asking a single thing about me, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling. And a painful thought crossed my mind. If I disappeared tomorrow, his routine would change. But his life might not. That was the moment I stopped pretending everything was okay. Not out loud. Inside. Something shifted. I could no longer keep giving from an empty place. The next morning, I did something different that I didn't rush. I didn't fill the silence. I sat at the table and let myself feel everything I had been avoiding. And I asked myself a question I had never dared to ask before. Who am I without being needed? The answer scared me. I realized how much of myself I had given away, not because he demanded it, but because I believed love meant sacrifice without limits. I believed strength meant silence. I believed being good meant asking for nothing. That belief had erased me. Slowly, quietly, completely, that night I cried. Not silently. Not hidden. I cried for the woman I had abandoned. For the years I had poured into everyone else. For the voice I had swallowed to keep peace. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if things could change. But I knew one thing. I could not continue living like this. Because love that makes you disappear is not love that can last. After that quiet breaking point, I did not make any big announcements. I did not threaten to leave. I did not demand change. I simply stopped disappearing. The change began in small ways. I took my time in the mornings. I drank my tea slowly. Instead of rushing through it, I allowed silence to exist without filling it. And for the first time in years, I listened to myself. At first, he did not notice. And that hurt. But I had expected it. He was used to everything running smoothly. Used to me being available, steady, and quiet. I had taught him that this was normal. I began stepping outside the house more. Short walks. Nothing dramatic. Just me, moving at my own pace. Feeling the air. Noticing the world again. I remembered that life existed beyond these walls. One afternoon, he asked, "Are you going somewhere?" I looked at him calmly and said, "I already went." He paused. Not upset, just surprised. And for the first time, that surprise did not belong to me. I still cared for him, still cooked, still shared space. But I stopped centering my entire existence around his comfort. I rested when I was tired. I spoke when I felt unseen. Not loudly, not angrily, just honestly. A few days later, he finally asked, "Is something wrong?" I took a breath before answering. Then I said, "I've been wrong for a long time. I just didn't say it." He sat down, really sat, and listened. That evening we talked longer than we had in years.
No accusations.
No raised voices. I told him how invisible I had felt, how lonely it was to give so much without being noticed, how I had lost myself trying to keep everything peaceful. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that surprised me. "I thought you were strong. I thought you didn't need anything." I nodded. I was strong, I said softly. But I needed to be seen. That moment did not fix everything, but it opened a door. For the first time, he understood that my silence was not strength. It was exhaustion. In the days that followed, small things began to change. He asked how my day was, and waited for the answer. He noticed when I was tired. He thanked me, not out of habit, but with awareness that I also changed. I stopped apologizing for my needs. I stopped shrinking when I spoke. I learned that asking for space did not mean I loved him less. It meant I loved myself more. There were awkward moments. Old habits tried to return. But now I recognize them, and I gently refused to disappear again. One evening, he brought home flowers. Simple ones. He said, "I didn't realize how much you've been carrying." I held the flowers and felt something soften inside me. Not relief, recognition. That night, lying beside him, I felt present, not erased, not forgotten, just seen. And I understood something important. Love does not disappear all at once. It fades when it is not noticed, and it can return when awareness replaces comfort. I forgave him, not because he was perfect, but because he was finally looking. And I forgave myself too, for believing love meant losing myself. The house feels different now. Not louder, not perfect, just warmer. Because there are two people living here again. Not one holding everything together, and one being carried. Now, when I look back at those years, I do not feel anger. I feel understanding. Understanding for the woman I was, and compassion for the woman I became. I see how quietly I disappeared, not because anyone pushed me away, but because I believed love meant endurance. I believed that if I kept giving, one day I would be noticed without asking. But love does not work like that. Love needs presence. Love needs listening. And sometimes love needs courage. I learned that silence can feel peaceful, but it can also become a hiding place. I hid my needs to protect the family. I hid my pain to keep harmony. And slowly, I hid myself. There were days I stood in the kitchen, looking at the walls I helped build, and wondered how I became a stranger inside my own life. No one teaches you that this can happen. It happens quietly. I used to think strength meant staying quiet. Now I know strength is gentle honesty. It is saying, I matter too. Not with anger, not with blame, but with calm truth. My husband did not forget me overnight. He forgot me little by little. Because comfort can make people careless. Because routine can dull awareness. Because love, when not tended to, can become invisible. And I forgave him, not because forgetting is harmless, but because learning is possible, because people can wake up, because hearts can change when they're shown truth instead of silence. Most importantly, I forgave myself for believing that my value depended on how much I gave, for thinking rest was weakness, for waiting so long to speak. Now, I speak gently, but I speak. I rest when I am tired. I ask when I need. And I no longer disappear to keep peace. If you are listening to this, and you feel unseen in your own home, if you give and hope someone will notice, please hear me. You do not need to become invisible to be loved. You do not need to suffer quietly to be strong. And you do not need to wait until you break to speak. Love grows best where both people are present. Not perfect, not always balanced, but aware. Homes are not built by walls alone. They are built by the hearts inside them. And every heart deserves to be seen. Today, when I sit in the quiet of our home, I no longer feel alone. Not because everything is perfect, but because I am here, fully. And that is the lesson I carry now. Love others deeply. But never forget yourself. Because the woman who builds the home should never be the one who disappears inside it.